your maximum weight where your body can reach. That's how you know. Physicians, please teach the church members these things. Nurses, you know all these things. Teach them, then you should know. That when they exceed, they should know that I need to get back to this. Because by getting beyond, you're attracting diabetes. That's very important. Okay? So BMI is key that you should know. So the calculation of BMI is weight over height squared. So when you know your weight, divide by height squared, you're going to find the answer to what your BMI is at present. So your normal is supposed to be 18.5 to 24.9. Once you just exceed 24.9, once you get to 25, then you're overweight. Once you get to 30, you're obese. And once you're below 18.5, you're underweight. So being thin is not being healthy. And being fat is not being healthy. You're supposed to know where you're supposed to be. In Africa, there's a tendency to understand that the bigger you are, then you're more healthy. That's disease. That's disease. Okay, body mass index, very important, okay? So, please now listen, obese persons become a stress that invites the diabetes, okay? So, this leads to too much tissue for insulin to service. So, there's going to be too much tissues for insulin to service, overproduction of insulin, okay? So, when the body fat competes with muscle, the muscles for insulin, the fat usually wins. So, when the body fat is too high, okay? When the body fat is too high, the fat usually wins. So when the fat wins, it actually paralyzes the insulin binding cells. The beta cells, they die. Okay? Carbohydrates are changed. So the more you eat, even just carbohydrates, if you're eating too much carbohydrates every day, too much cassava every day, every day, as you eat that and the body is not working to break down that which you're eating, the body stores it as fat. Then the fat paralyzes the insulin binding cells. Equivalent to the work you're doing. So if my work is in the office, but I want to eat too much every day, my body will bulge and weaken the pancreas. So what you eat should be serviced by the work that you're doing. So that's key for us to take note, and so that diabetes should not come. Okay? So diabetes is the disorder of carbohydrates, fats, and protein metabolism. So they cannot be metabolized properly, cannot be broken down properly. So it is characterized by the elevation of fasting glucose levels and greatly increase the risk of... so sometimes when there's too much fat building up and insulin of being overproduced, it leads to the risk of atherosclerosis, kidney diseases, and the loss of nerve function. So when people are diabetic, you find that they have nerve damage. The nerves can't function well. Others will develop heart. So the challenge with diabetes, it leads to many conditions. Your heart will be affected. Okay? Your kidneys will be affected. And that is a challenge with diabetes. When people have diabetes, all these organs get affected also. Your sight will be affected. Glaucoma will come. Cataract, that's a challenge with diabetes. It leads to many other problems in the body. That's why you're supposed to know how to eat and how to help the body function. So the symptoms of diabetes are increased. So when somebody is diabetic, what are the symptoms? Things that tells you that you might have diabetes. So the symptoms are increased thirsty. You feel like you need more water because of continuous urinating. You're losing water. So you feel like you need water from time to time. Abdominal discharge of pale and watery urine. You keep on urinating from time to time. Within a short period of time, you go to the toilet. Okay? Especially when the sugar levels are high. The body knows that when the sugar levels are high, why do diabetics go to the toilet from time to time? The body knows that this sugar is too high and it will damage other parts of the body. So the body switches to a system where the kidney starts filtering the water by forcing you to go to the toilet so that sugar goes out. Because when the sugar is high, it acts like high voltage of electricity that may damage the whole body. So the body itself starts now taking it out so that you don't die. That's how come diabetes will keep on going to the toilet from time to time so that the body balances the sugar levels. Okay, so there's a discharge of pale watery urine. Some people feel weak every time because the sugars cannot be assimilated in the cell walls, so they are feeling weak all the time. Weakness and drowsiness. Okay, loss of weight. Now, most diabetics begin when they are very big, and when diabetes comes, they become thin. Because the body is not using the energy, so it uses the energy from your fats. So it eats you up and you become small and small. So that's why one of the things to tell that one is diabetic, if somebody was very big, then within a short period of time they lose weight, check your sugar levels. It's a sign that you might be diabetic. Okay? So it's very important to take note, okay? They're supposed to make a pancreas of a cow. They go in and attach themselves to your pancreas. Then the body will know to say, this does not belong here. These are fake cells. So the body is going to now start fighting its own body, which is called autoimmune. So in fighting its own body, which is called autoimmune. So in fighting and killing those fake cells, it damages the pancreas and insulin. That's autoimmune disease. That's how it comes. That's why it's dangerous to put in a child on cow's milk, because they might end up diabetic. Juvenile diabetes, as they grow up. Okay? So that's one of the. Then the type 2. So there's type 1 and type 2. The difference between type 1 and type 2 is this, that in type 1, the pancreas is not producing insulin. In type 2, it's producing but not enough insulin. That's the difference. So in type 2, there is production of insulin but very little. In type 1, there is no production of insulin. That's the difference. So most of all adults will begin with type 2, right? Yes, so the pancreas, when it starts being weakened because of eating too much fried foods, not exercising, too much polished foods, and when it comes in, the pancreas starts being paralyzed and there's little production of insulin. That's type 2. Okay? So now you don't want to get that because it brings trouble to the body. So we know that there are two types, okay? So hence, such an individual becomes totally dependent on an external supply of insulin to balance the sugar levels of the body. That's why in type 1, they depend on what? Insulin injection. Because it can't produce. Okay? So this type of diabetes usually strikes at puberty when the children are growing and they reach puberty, they comes in. Hence the term, thence it's called juvenile diabetes and affects about 10% of all diabetics. Okay? Adult onset diabetes is caused by a buildup of glucose outside the cell walls which cannot enter the cells. Glucose, so there's this glucose that is not entering the cells because there's little production of insulin, so it's outside. So it's sometimes called sugar diabetes. For the urine of such person is sweet. It's too much sugar. And many years ago it was discovered that the urine of diabetics attracts ants. So it was even discovered, okay? So a typical high, so what causes type 2? It's a typical high fat diet. Eating too much fat. Every morning you want to eat bread with eggs and butter. Bread with eggs. You're asking for diabetes. Sausage, bread, eggs, and butter. And you say, I live well. I have money. Wait until diabetes comes. By the way, in my country, if the hospital, when it comes to eggs, the normal prescription in my country, in the hospital, is 1 egg in a week. That's how people are prescribed in the hospital. 1 egg in a week. That's the normal in the hospital. At church, in the Seventh-day Adventist, I'll tell you it's 0. So this type can be, now listen, they're saying type 2, this type can be overcome by diet. Just that. Diet control, number 1. So what are you supposed to do? Weight control and exercise. Very important. Now remember, we also said that diabetes can come out of stress, right? So you cannot be big, but because of too much stress, it can come. It can shut down the pancreas, okay? So the person who has this disease typically, most of them, they are typically overweight and presents 1 or 2 mild symptoms. Susceptibility to disease may be increased by an increase in obesity and inactivity. So when you're obese and you're not active, this problem can catch you. Okay? So insulin acts as a carrier to assist sugar into the cells where it is assimilated for energy. If there is not enough insulin to accommodate all the cells, or the passage is partially blocked. So sometimes the body may produce insulin, but the passage for insulin to push in the glucose is blocked by fats. That's where the challenge is. That's how come in type 2, if people control their weight and burn the fat, diabetes even disappears. Type 2. Okay? So if the passage is partially blocked, sugar accumulates and begins to form bottlenecked. Okay? So it has been found that, it has been found that sedentary persons requires much more insulin than those who are active. So people who are not active, the body needs more what? Insulin. to drive the energy. But those who are active, through exercise, the body is able to burn and energy is laid easily. Okay? Now listen, white sugar does not have raw materials required for the manufacture of insulin. Now look at this. The manufacture of insulin is produced by the food you eat. But white sugar does not help the body to produce insulin. So if you are eating, do you have sugar cane here? Do you have sugar cane here? That's the best sugar to eat. Eat it. It's the best sugar. Not white spoon sugar, polished ones, no. But I'm saying this, white sugar cane, eating the sugar cane is the best sugar before you have diabetes. But when you have it, you can't even eat sugar cane. You can't. So when you're eating sugar cane, you're actually, sugar cane in a complete sense the way it is, it actually comes with the mineral elements to rebuild the pancreas to assimilate the energy. But if you take white spoon sugar, it just makes the body to overproduce sugar, insulin, and damages the insulin binding cells. That's what it does. One of the things that is so good for insulin binding cells is beans. You know beans? The best protein for diabetics is beans. When you eat beans, beans builds the insulin binding cells. Beans. Just beans. Okay? So now listen. So we are told to say white sugar does not have the raw materials required for the manufacture of insulin. With its extensive use, insulin production may be greatly reduced or stopped altogether. And this is when diabetes can develop. So if you like too much sweets, every day you're eating sweets where they've used white sugar, cakes, ice cream, chocolates, too much white sugar, white spoon sugar, it actually leads to diabetes. Okay? So this dreadful disease, now listen, this dreadful disease is prevalent in direct proportion to the intake of both refined sugars and flour. So refined foods, refined flour, this can come. So diabetes was unknown before the appearance of food refinement. Before food was refined, there was no diabetes. As long as excess insulin flows around the system, the body cannot burn the fat. So one can burn excess sugars that has been placed in the storage or as fat. So this stored fat produces more cholesterol, and eventually cholesterol leads to degenerative heart disease. That's how come when this sugar is kept, which cannot be used, it leads to cholesterol. That can cause now a heart condition. That's how come many diabetics have heart conditions. So you don't want this, so please be effective. So this accelerates the development of coronary heart disease caused by increased levels of insulin in the blood. So insulin is remember we learned that insulin is a growth promoter and sclerosis, so they had to expand in size because of insulin. So if it's given in high, now listen, if it is given high enough doses, it can bring down the glucose levels of blood, but it also may increase the risk of coronary heart. So those people who are on insulin, it will control the sugar, but it can also lead to heart conditions. Insulin. By the way, insulin is mostly made from sheep's blood. Sheep blood, and also that's what mostly they use to make insulin. So I need you to understand that the best is God's method. The best actually is to prevent it, because when it comes, you can try many methods. It's a challenge. Even in the natural treatment, it's not easy. It's not that easy. Overeating and overweight. Diabetes is very closely linked with obesity. Obesity causes diabetes by increasing the amount of insulin needed by the tissues to service the disposal of accumulated blood sugar. It's estimated that 90% of type 2 cases could be prevented if people would get to their ideal weight and stay there. Now remember, NKOMBO was talking about morning sacrifice and evening sacrifice, right? That's why the best way to eat meals, the best is 2 meals in a day. It's biblical. But people eat in between meals. Every time they want to be eating, they eat this, that, this 1 hour, another food. They don't want to rest the pancreas. It dies. They overwork the body. So when you eat well, you avoid having diabetes mellitus. Okay, my time is up. Now here is what you're going to do. Listen, People usually get diabetes from eating too much and gaining too much weight. Type 2, 2 out of 3 diabetics are overweight. Mostly diabetics are overweight. But today, even those who are thin is plenty. Okay? So now they did this research in the US. 5 chemists and 3 physicians in the US carried out an experiment on 4,000 diabetics and concluded that only one needed insulin. They recovered on correct nutrition alone, just by eating well. So what are the best foods for diabetics? Millet is one of the best for the grains. Millet is one of the best for diabetics. Millet, sorghum, oats, brown rice, those are the best grains for diabetics. Okay? Protein, peas, beans, lentils, variety of beans is one of the best protein for diabetics. And more vegetables on your diet. What type of fruits are good for diabetics? Okay. All berries are good for diabetics. Strawberries, blueberries, they are good. Mulberries are good for what? Diabetics. When you are diabetic, even a banana will shoot your sugar high. Yes. Just a banana. Sweet banana. When you are diabetic, you can't even use honey. Honey is too sweet. It's even sweeter than sugar. It may shoot your sugar. Now, the problem with Seventh-day Adventists, when they become diabetic, that's when they want to start taking honey. Honey is the right sugar before you're diabetic. But when you have it, you can't. You know, that's when people start taking those drinks they call 100% no sugar. So where do you think the sweetness comes from? Made out of sugar, very sweet. Made in the factories. Go and check. It's just sugars there. Now, because when people see 100% no sugar, you can't give those things to a diabetic. The sugar just shoots. Even you, who's not diabetic, those things are high in sugars that they can bring diabetes. It's a business. It has nothing to do with your health. I want you to know that. So you need to understand, so that the best fruits for diabetics are avocado, lemon, okay? All berries are good for diabetics, okay? Green apple is good for diabetics. So you need to have control and know what is good for you when you have diabetes, because the automatic way of controlling sugar has died. So now you have to use your mind to say, this I can't eat, this I can control using your mind. And so, some millet and good fruits and all vegetables, most of the vegetables. So a diabetic should eat more vegetables. More garlics, more onions, more carrots, more parsley. Eat more vegetables. They are good for you. Broccoli, cauliflower, they are all good for you. Okay? Especially wild vegetables. Wild vegetables are more good. Wild vegetables. Because they are not tempered with. The other vegetables, because of chemicals and the rest, so the wild vegetables are vegetables that grow for themselves. The others that we are growing every day with chemicals, they cause another effect to you. So please eat more vegetables. That's why when a diabetic is eating more vegetables, the sight still becomes good. Especially raw vegetables, salads. It improves their sight. But the more you eat cooked vegetables, the strength is less to help you. That's why they should be cooked and more raw vegetables on your diet. Do not give fried foods to diabetics. No. Don't give. Frying is not a method of cooking. The best method of cooking is raw or boiling or steaming or roasting, not frying. Frying is a method from the West, because people when they go to America, they run away from Nigeria. They are doing 6 jobs in a day. So they will come and fry the eggs. They go back for work. Another job after 2 hours. They fry. They have no time to cook proper food. Hence, diabetes catches them easily in the Western countries. So come and be a medical missionary. May the Lord bless us.